if you're thinking about getting solar panels for your house, let's go over first the mechanics of it, and then the finances of it, and then the a couple of warnings, if you will. So if you see, you can't really see the flat panels, you can see on the roof, I've actually done this, and I'm going to relay as we go through this my experience with a company called Revolution Solar, because they did this here. And only as we go through it, think of sort of an analogy of a cell phone where you buy the cell phone over the period of many months, a couple of years on a contract with a cell phone provider, as opposed to paying for that entire unit outright. Okay. In this case, it's not like a 2-year contract, it's more like 10, 20 years, because those panels are pretty expensive. And what happens is they wire to this big battery in your basement, and then your power gets drawn from that battery, and then apparently once you get to whatever your plan is, anything above that is drawn from the power company. Okay, so let's go in a little bit more detail on how that part works. So let's say you use this much electricity a month, right? Now, normally with the power company, you would pay in some periods of time, let's say 8 cents per kilowatt hour. That's how the electricity is measured. In other periods of time, the price may be 10 cents per kilowatt hour. In other times, it may be like 12 cents per kilowatt hour. Then may drop down to 10 and so forth, right? So if you average this, what the solar company is going to do is they're going to average that over a very long period of time. Say, okay, well, for this last 2 years or year and a half, you've been paying, you know, your Pepco bill or whatever has averaged out to be, let's say, 10 cents per kilowatt hour. So what we're going to do is we're going to offer you a plan where you're going to pay 9 cents per kilowatt hour, right? But you have to commit to a plan, right? So there's a couple things with this. Number one is, instead of with the power company, okay, yeah, I'm paying sometimes more, sometimes less, but when I move, when I sell, whatever, doesn't matter. I call them, yank the service, we're done, right? Here, not the case, because you're now committed for X number of years or decades to paying that rate. So it's good if the price goes up, and so let's say instead of 12 or 10 cents per kilowatt hour, now the price is like 20 cents per kilowatt hour, but you're still at that 9 cent mark, right? That's what solar companies are going to offer you. However, well, let's say that electricity price drops like 5 cents per kilowatt hour. Now you're locked into that 9 cent rate. Okay. The other thing is, like I said, you're locked in, so you can't just leave. You have to pay that amount. So back to this. Let's say out of this much electricity, my typical bill is $100 a month, right? However much electricity that is. But if I was with the solar company, that amount would be $90 a month. So let's say, I'll say, okay, well, I'm using $90 worth of a bunch of solar electricity, so I'll sign up for the $85 plan, because if I go over, kind of I lose that money basically. Here's how it works. So let's say you sign up for the $85 a month plan. All that energy gets drawn from the solar panels into the big battery, into the basement. So by the way, just as a little aside on Revolution Solar, I don't have a big battery in my basement, so I'm not sure where that power is coming from. Maybe I forgot to put it in there. And my I'm paying the premium, but my electric bill is actually kind of the same as it was. But that's just a little bit on the side. So you sign up for the $85 plan, right? And you draw $90 worth, right? So you use up your 85, your battery worth of 85, and then that other $5 gets paid to the electric company, because you say, okay, you got 85 from the solar, but now the electric company, we're gonna pay $5, right? Or you're gonna pay $5, right? Well, what if you use less? What if you only use $80 of electricity that month? Well, the other $5, you don't get that back because you're committed to that fixed rate. What happens is somehow that goes back feeds back onto the grid. The solar company gets money through Pepco or however that works. Doesn't matter. You're not getting the money through the grid. So they've essentially used your space to make a profit for them. All right. Now, that's why you have to make sure that you get the timing right of that agreement that you want to do. Okay. So, on the a couple of warnings. So number one is, if you're going to sell this place, now you're passing on to the buyer that commitment, and they may not want to do that. Now, if that buyer wants solar and they're on board, great. But if they don't, now you've limited the market share of your buyers. And any buying real estate agent is going to tell them, he's got solar panels, this is how much he owes on the solar panels, and so you're going to now be absorbing that cost, right? So that's one thing to look out for. The second thing, and the main thing, is your roof. So what happens is, the way they have to affix these panels to the roof, they have to compromise the roof in order to bolt the panels into the roof. And so then they put a sealant around the bolts, etc. But it's not like, shingle over shingle over shingle over shingle, where you're using physics to have the water whisk away and you won't get leaks until the shingles are compromised, and you just reshingle it, or in my case, on a metal roof, and you just redo the metal. In this case, you have to monitor every one of the seals. And the problem is, you see I've got a bunch of panels here and a bunch of panels there, and that's a lot of seals if there's multiple posts per panel. And so in here, I actually have a leak, and the problem is, with that leak, right, it's hard to find. Now you've got to get somebody to go up on that roof, which is pretty high. The panels take up the majority of the roof to try and hunt down that leak. Now in the case of Revolution Solar, the first time they came by and they attempted to fix the leak. And I will say, I'll give them a B on the job that they did. Because it was fixed, but when there's a heavy rain, it does leak. So there's some area of leakage there. Since then, I basically called and texted them over the course of, I'm going to say, a year, and I'm happy to show you my thread of text messages, and there's been no response. Probably because, like with any situation, hey, I was up there, I fixed as best I could. If it's not done, well, that's the best I can do, right? I understand that, but I've got a leaking roof. So if you have a new roof, an expensive roof, whatever, for your house to be roofed, you got to watch out for that, because by the time you see that roof leak, right, it's already gone through a lot to get to the ceiling where you can see water forming on the ceiling. By that time, a lot of the damage up to that point has been done. So that's going to be kind of expensive to deal with. So that's just one more thing to consider, is unless, the solar company approaches you, unless they can tell you, okay, I can affix these panels to your roof without compromising your roof, then that would be a different story. Maybe they have another way to seal the panels onto the roof, without, like I said, without being invasive and puncturing the roof. Then that's a better deal if you're going to stay there for a while, if your electric bill is high and you're willing to accept that rate. And so those are some of the things that you want to consider if you're thinking about going solar.